Hello, welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I hope your family and you are safe and staying away, staying indoors. That's very important. For you to view this episode and other sessions that I run on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so you can be alerted when the live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to ask questions directly to the guests. So please press the follow button on LinkedIn and Twitter, and subscribe button on YouTube, and also press the bell icon on YouTube so that there is an alert going out. For maximum reach of this episode, please like and share this episode, whichever platform you're watching on. Okay, artificial intelligence has become one of the biggest buzzwords of the digital age. If you're not familiar with AI, it is essentially the concept that a computer can link, learn, and behave like a human. So I usually say it's not the artificial intelligence, but the human intelligence I'm worried about. But it is the human intelligence that drives artificial intelligence. Comprehensive AI can interpret data and use the learnings to perform a variety of tasks. Machine learning is the specific application of AI that allows it to interpret and analyze the data in a productive way. Today, AI is being used in a number of industries, including healthcare, education, financial services, e-commerce, human resources, you name it, and AI is everywhere. Generally speaking, most of the companies that use AI do so to make their business processes more efficient and to solve problems fast. With AI and machine learning, you're not only able to look at the data internally, but also look at the external data, that is the unstructured data that is lying outside of your systems. So welcome to the second episode of Artificial Intelligence Startup Insight series. In this series, we discuss both about artificial intelligence and how startups are leading in this space. Marc Teerlink, who is the SAP's Global Vice President for Intelligent Enterprise Solutions and Artificial Intelligence, comes on the show to give his advice and provide some knowledge to our viewers. Prior to SAP, Mark was at IBM Watson's. He was IBM Watson's chief business strategist during IBM's formative years of AI. For people who've heard about Jeopardy and IBM Watson on Jeopardy, he was one of the people behind that thought leadership. Mark is very active in the startup community as an angel investor, mentor, and a board member, which makes him much more relevant to this series and to this discussion. So without any further ado, let me bring in Mark to the show. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Shelly. Good morning. Good afternoon.
I've lost your wallet. How are you?
Can you hear me?
You're coming with a delay, but that's fine. How are you doing?
I am doing good. I'm sorry that there's a delay. We're going to refresh at the next moment. We have a little break for that.
Okay.
Really happy to be here. Really happy to be here.
Good stuff.
It's really fun after last time, and we're doing this now again. I think it's from the reactions I've gotten back, there's a very positive vibe that people got out of last episode, and I hope we can top it today. We have a phenomenal guest already, I saw, Shelly, so that's good.
So talking about the last episode, the episode I ran between our last episode and another episode, we saw more than 100 likes just on Facebook during the show. So guys, we got to beat that. Everyone who are watching this show, please press the like button, because I have a challenge to myself to beat that 100 likes that we had in the last show of Women in Data Science. So let's try and beat that. So if you're watching this show on any platform, please press the like button and share button so that more and more people can watch this. Now, coming back to AI, AI has only scratched the surface on financial services. So if you look at the financial services industry, it's only scratched the surface. There are dozens of processes that could be greatly improved using AI. And over time, more financial service providers are implementing and will implement the technology across their businesses. What are some of the applications that are currently being impacted by AI in the financial services?
So Thank you for it. This is a really good question. I think we need to make a bridge a little bit with last week and this week for the people who have been also, or 2 weeks ago, who've been looking at last episode. The last episode talked about companies that took a company, NWOAI, that took external data. Now, 70% of the data in a company today, 70%, 70, is not the data behind your firewall, but data that you get from outside your company. Last week, we talked about a company who worked with indicators and trends, things that were happening and how they anticipated the financial impact of COVID. Right? That's also something that has an incredible impact on the investment community in the fintech world. It has an impact in people that manage risk, manage portfolio, and wealth management. What we see is that a lot of the other successful companies like we have today actually have not just been focusing on external data, but say, how do I do something with data that's behind the firewall, data that is uniquely from a company, and apply that on a process. Now, that sounds really easy, but the reality is when you train an algorithm, when you do a series of deep learning, you basically still have to do a generic. You can't train it for one company, because if you take that to the market, to the next company, you need to really be careful that the original training data from company one doesn't leak into company two, unless you made a specific deal with company one that all the training data that they supplied is okay, it can be relicensed. Mostly it isn't. Let me give you some examples. Right, one of the first things we saw in AI was contract management. Contracts are code, for a better word. A lot of contracts literally have rules in them. And the moment you want to compare contracts, you actually got to parse the rules and compare them to a second contract or third, and say where in this financial contract are conflicts. This is really important for risk management. Now, having worked myself at the beginning of my career in finance, I can tell you that most part of that industry, being a consumer psychologist from origin, is about two emotions, greed and fear. So risk management, which we're going to take today, tops a lot, but risk management has different dimensions. We just talked about last week's NWOAI, how they basically took the market risk in it, but there's a risk of exposure, which has an impact of customer management. For instance, there's the risk that is actually before lending or the risk during the lending. There's risk in the mortgage. Do I identify the right exposure and risk? But there's also risk when the mortgage is on, especially on commercial property. Those are typical kind of examples that we see. The other part is what we call robotic process automation. Can I take a process as it is and automate a task of heavy lifting? And the last is compliance. And this is where they all come together. Let me give you an example. One of the largest banks in the US, JP Morgan Chase Manhattan, a few years ago had over 19,000 lawyers. So imagine you go 4 years to college, you do 3 years, pass the whole law school, you pass the bar, and your job is to do compliance of product descriptions. So you go to this list of this product description, you go to a spreadsheet and you say, meets this condition, privacy, is as exposure or risk not, needs to be changed or not. And you literally go to a spreadsheet 70-80% of your time. What an incredible waste of that talent. And the problem is most of those lawyers don't have the time to really say, let's re-edit that product description, which is actually the contract that you and I have for a credit card or for a bank account. So we end up, people like you and me as consumers, end up with the mother of all product descriptions, right? Without any clarity what it means, because nobody has the time to edit. So you get addition after addition. The moment they started working with technology that they did a comply and a compare, is the new rule still compliant with the current regulations or not? Is the new product description or is it changed there? They save time on the tasks. And as a benefit, they could be much more effective on those kind of products. Now, we see, for instance, in mortgage, the same. The good thing of AI is the transparency that can be and should be, we think, built in the product. How did you come to an answer? So you as a consumer, when you take a mortgage, you would really like to know when you reject it, I don't get it. I make enough money. I'm only taking 60% mortgage on this house. Why did you reject me? And in the past, you get this black magic, and computer said no. But what's really important is you don't have to expose, like for instance in Europe, the regulation behind the GDPR, European directive, say that from 2021, all algorithm needs to be explainable. So if you get rejected for your mortgage, the financial institute needs to explain to a business, to a small business owner, to a consumer, you live in the zip code, you live around this, too many people in this category, in this job category, in this zip code have been defaulted, therefore we reject you, which allows you to go back to a financial institution and say, hey, Mr. Mortgage Lender, I understand that I'm in a risk category. What can we do to negotiate the exposure of that risk on my mortgage, right? Do I need to do only 50% of the amount? Do I need to put up more collateral, right? What would have me change the parameters? And most smart consumers and most smart business owners already have figured out how to rig the algorithm. So you better make it transparent, because then you know how they're rigging it, at least, what we see in lending, and there's this, FinTech 2020 is really about improving not just the efficiency, but in FinTech process, but making the best of your knowledgeable expert time available again, right? So what we really see is the predictions in lender, right? Think about file segments, think about credit history. Especially in the US, credit history is an important thing. It's still ironic that in a country of that mass wealth, credit system is based on the fact that you pay your debts. So if this is a joke always, when Obama stopped being president, right? He had not used so much, he had hardly used his personal credit cards. So technically he would not get a loan. When Bernanke stopped being the president of the Fed, right? Same story. The guy had hardly spent any money, didn't take loans, didn't use his credit card, and his credit rating was so impacted he couldn't actually get a mortgage, right? So the irony of such systems is that become too rigid in their own assumptions. And what AI can do is help us to understand, but there's a reason this person had a high profile job, expenses paid, etc. How do you deal with outliers that actually could give you a phenomenal amount of business? Now, if you're in the 19 to 35 group, right, loan approval really at the moment, current algorithms are biased against you. You have a high study loan, you have this, but there are certain indicators in a loan, consumer loan, that predicts you. If you graduated from MIT, yes, you might have $200,000 still as a study loan, but you graduated in data science and AI. I wouldn't, as a bank, be too uncomfortable about your ability to pay that, right?
No, but I tell you something, what you're saying is exactly true, because I've gone through that myself. So when I reached Australia 15 years ago, I had around about $25,000 in the bank, and I went for a credit card approval from the company, which is not the bank company, because they were giving me much more benefits, and they rejected my application because they thought I didn't have the credit history, I didn't have the money I could pay back, though I was on a good salary package. But even $2,000 worth of a credit card limit wasn't approved because they thought I didn't have the credit history, which was funny. And I said, well, I have the money. I earn far more than that a month. So, you can't give me a credit card. And to your first point, exactly that conversation I had with someone 2-3 days ago, where we were talking about getting a loan, and he said, sir, there is an issue, you may not be able to get the loan. I said, but I've got enough money in the bank. So, but the credit score doesn't allow that, or the credit history doesn't support that. Well, what model? I asked them, how did you calculate that? Oh, we don't know how we calculate that, but the system is saying you can only get $500,000. I said, well, but that's not enough. I need more. And so these are the kind of discussions I go through as a consumer. And having said that, and let me wear the consumer's hat. when these kind of changes are happening in the industry, how is the customer experience being improved, and how is it changing based on the automation that is coming through using machine learning and AI and IoT and all of that, using both the internal and external data? What are the changes? What are the benefits to the consumer that you see?
Well, I think the consumer is first a lot of financial institutes will focus still on operational OPEX savings, right? That's a little bit the sad thing, because if you really look to compliance, that if you take BAL or Basel III and those kind of financial compliance, they were not just meant to, you must be compliant with risk management, but they were actually meant like, hey, if you can do a risk-adjusted profitability of your customer, you can anticipate and predict a much better, healthier relationship development of that client, and you can actually be much more positive in your customer management. So we see two kind of financial institutions, those that only look to today and yesterday and operational cost reduction, and you see some examples of companies, financial institutions that actually said, can I use this to strengthen my relationship with consumers, for instance? And one of the example, right, is if you take, for instance, Fannie Mae or the Federal Housing Administration in the US, they actually said, can we use this to faster approve or enter a dialogue with a small business owner, a customer, etc., on financial of building mortgages, like small restaurant owners or whatever, and have this discussion with them why they can't be accepted under these terms, but what we can in the dialogue. Now, there used to be no time. If you take 30 to 35 days to hear that your mortgage was rejected, right? If you had to continuously push new data in and wait another 35 days, it took like 9 months before you got it. You couldn't do that. But if you literally can have a conversation and the AI tooling grabs the data, maybe there's some missing part, and worst case, within 24 hours, you actually can talk with an advisor, and you go in a dialogue. You have a total different customer model. But that's because they look forward-looking, right? So I think the hardest thing is the mindset of traditional bankers to realize that this is not just about reducing, and it's not unfair, right? You need to reduce your compliance costs. You need to reduce your OPEX, because in digital banking, we don't have the same kind of relationship in business banking or consumer. But I think the insights, the massive insights that are basically happening at the moment because of AI, and how you can filter and slice data much faster through deep learning and adjust it, has made an incredible impact, starting with wealth management the last 3-4 years. There is nobody who has $200,000 on the bank is going to accept well, that's just a portfolio as an answer. That used to be the 5 million part, right? That's after 5 million, you could be coming with difficult questions to your customer, to your bank account or wealth management. And now people again, it's still a serious amount for a lot of people, $200,000 or euros, don't get me wrong. But the fact that you now can micro segment and have micro discussions, right, and have those details available, that's an incredible customer experience impact. It also means that you can automate some decisions between you and your customer. You can literally give them a dashboard and say, here are some sliders. This is some basic advice. Here's a chat box for the frequent asked questions. Now, if you really want to talk about your portfolio, schedule a Zoom appointment with Mary or Bob. We didn't have that 15 years ago.
No, we didn't. No, but having said that, what are they doing with all that social media data? Because there is so much of information lying on the social media as well at the moment about an individual on Facebook, on Twitter, and on God knows, all of these new things that are coming up. Are they utilizing that information as well for the background check?
So that's a real good one. I think that a lot of privacy laws that have become more stringent actually don't allow you just to pull up the data and pick up. So there's all kinds of tricks about it, like companies that come from the outside and they make indicators. So I can't go directly as a bank and make some assumptions. And by the way, You might look totally legit on one social media, and the other part reveal where you are private reveals something that I come now as a bank. Well, the second person that reveals it, and it's used against them. So the biggest fear that Gen Z is different, but upon Gen Z, that people had like, will you use my social media behavior against me? Gen Z has this mentality, no, I make this all open. Now you better use it. And in that, I think financial institutions are still struggling how to deal with one part privacy and the other part find good, I call it more influencer indications. How much does my behavior influence others? Am I a pace setter? So as a consumer, when I talk about a product or a credit card or my usage, will it positively impact other people? Will it actually negatively impact me and how I use it? And they're still struggling with it. So at best, at the moment, I see that in a separate notion that marketeers from financial institutions are using a lot of data to get sentiment and emotions, etc. But no way are they allowed by privacy law or able to do it. Now, some are smart. They say, well, I'm going to make segments here and apply the segments there. And surprise, Shelley meets both, right? and yeah, there are ways around it. But the point is let's just face it, right? Banking and insurance are, from an outside perspective, incredible boring. If somebody comes home and says to their parents, I'm going to do a fintech startup, most people would say, really? Or I'm going to do a cool retail startup. Nobody walks on Oxford Street in London with their spouse and say, oh, honey, let's go into HSBC and because they're really good with AI, and let's go to the brochures, right? You don't do that. But you say,
No. But actually, I'll tell you something. The customer experience that it provides at the back end due to the automation actually is a deterrent for people to leave that bank, even if they're getting. And I'll tell you why. And that's my personal example. I was approached by a mortgage lender, and that's why the conversations a couple of days ago. And he said, you know what? I can get you a better interest rate, and I'll move you to a different bank. So I asked him what kind of app do they have, and what kind of how flashy is their environment, and what benefits do I get. And when he started explaining me what they had, I said, keep that interest rate, mate. I'm sorry, I'm not moving. So
that's a real good part. So one of the best part of the consumer, I really appreciate that sector from you. One of the part that makes the consumer experience really good is, are you able to give transparency back to your consumer or to your mid-sized business, the people who don't have a large financial analytic department? Are you able to provide me with a seamless customer experience, right? A user experience through digital banking. I mean, is it as easy as swiping, right? Can I just do simple comparing? And actually, when you look at the better retailers that use AI, if you like products like this, you like this. If you have this kind of financial portfolio, you might want to look at that, right? The experience with an app, especially mobile, the experience with filtering, recommendation, and insight that you provide is enormous. But at the other side, financial institution needs to learn how to deal, I keep coming back to that, with that privacy around data part. Like a very good example is a few years ago, one of the large Dutch consumer banks said, we're going to analyze all your buying behavior and your ATM behavior, so we can do two things. We can do a better placement of POSs and ATMs on locations that are in your interest. So we optimize things better for you. And we're actually going to help you in buying patterns, etc., by doing some pricing analysis for you. And people said, dude, you're not supposed to know what I buy and where I buy it. And I'm like that's a little bit nonsense, because data warehousing, we already looked at data and we say, hey, these two people live on the same address. They continuously exchange money to each other. It's clearly not rent because it's too frequent. It's probably a household, given the right, etc. So we already made a lot of connections. And then what people forgot in marketing is, if you don't offer a value proposition to a B2B or a B2C, you're never going to get the consent to use that. And the whole thing I would like to say is positive consent. If you create a value proposition powered by smart technology, you make it, as you said, in a customer experience, very seamless and pleasant and accessible, you will get a lot of leeway from consumers and give you, or small businesses, and give you consent. The point is always, like always, quid pro quo. What is in it for me? Because more and more consumers are realizing that data is not a currency. You know, if the product is free, your data is the payment, and we're figuring that out.
No. I tell you, the different factor works so much. What is in it for me works so much, and I tell you, I have run a couple of organizations where we have used customer data, and you know what I used to say was that because we are utilizing their data, there is an expectation from the consumer that they will get a personalized experience, they will get a better experience. Now if you use the data and don't do that, then there is a question around, don't use my data, don't do this, don't do that. But if you're giving, it is value to value, right? If you're using their data and providing them value at the end, I think that works brilliantly, and no one has any qualms about it, whether you use their data to do whatever.
Right.
Okay. Right. Before I get to the next question for you, Mark, I must say that there are around about 50 people watching now at the moment. Guys, I tell you, we have to get more than 100 likes, and we are 40% at the moment, because last week we had more than 100 likes on this show. So we need to beat that. I want it to be beaten today. So let's do that. And if you're watching on any of the platforms, please press the like button and also share it with more and more people so people can learn from all the knowledge that Mark gives on this particular show. So please share it as much as you want. There is one thing I will make a point before I get to the next question, Mark. Suresh Babu Maisa. Hi, Suresh. If you're watching, I saw that you were angry with something. I think you did that right in the beginning because Mark's speech was delayed. I think that we fixed. So can you move that to a like if you want? Because, that ways we can get another like of yours. Anyways, okay, let's get to the next question, Mark. Startups, right? That is why we are here today, right?
Yep.
What is the focus of startups that you see that is driving financial services, artificial intelligence area? So what are they focusing on? Is that insurance? Is that banking? And I have a point there that banking information is difficult to get because of privacy and everything. So for startups, it may be a difficult proposition. But what are you seeing in the market?
So that's an important question. What makes a fintech focused startup actually to consider to go in that market? There are two things I see. There is either those that really come from the industry, so they know a process well, and they have in that process that one annoying task that they want to replace with an AI solution, something that you can wedge in existing software in a financial institute. I think that's a really smart idea, provided that you start thinking from day one, how will it integrate with standard systems? Which APIs did I need to call? So beside your solution and your product being able to solve the problem that you're doing, you need to think from day one, how do you not get commoditized as a widget or a plugin? How do you make sure that integration is done in such a way that you start ahead, that not one of the big software platform or fintech solutions later say, oh, this is really great, I'm going to build this myself, and then it's over for you, right? You do that by having from day one thought about how do I connect, how do I layer, how do I integrate with this kind of thing, which mostly means you make both super APIs around your products, and you have a out-of-the-box GUI that's not always going to be used by a customer because they might just want to put it under the GUI from the product that they're using. But you make sure that even if it comes in that other product, it says powered by my product name. You need to think about your branding and you need about your integration. Now, we also see true innovation, people who do not come from fintech originally, but they ran into something. And some of them strike gold. They did some research, they worked on algorithms, and they said, this might be also interesting in this industry. These are mostly what I call horizontal problems that other industry also have. And for some reason, they run into a bank, right? A very good example is if I take Causality Link in the US. Causality Link has taken another approach that NWAI did last week. Yet what they have in similar, they use external data. They go to transcripts of financial reporting, CFO. They can forget some things, but they cannot lie when they do the transcript for the SEC and the shareholders. Yep. And they went to more than 80 languages, and they looked at, and most important, they focused on filtering out the bias. Wisdom of the crowd is not what everybody repeats. It is the points of origin that have impact. And in their dashboard that they made available, they literally said, okay, how do you connect this dashboard to your market? How do you connect this dashboard to your portfolio? So what they did is they took an external problem. They thought directly from the beginning, how do you connect this back to your financial system? And how do you customize or tailor this for that market or those products that are relevant for you?
Yep.
But the solution itself wasn't meant for finance. It was a horizontal thing, but they made that extra mile. And I think from day one, thinking remember when you go in a hotel and you have this really crappy old Honeywell Bull thermostat for your room that never works, right? Okay, that's what some engineers would call an MVP. And then you come in a hotel and they have a Nest and you get a password and you can run it from your phone. And before you go back in your hotel room where it is really warm because the maid turned off the airco, you just say, yeah, around 5 o'clock I'm back. Start it airco there, right? This time of year, Shelley, where you live, really important. Yeah. So that's what I call a minimum delight experience. And I think more startups should start thinking about what is the MDE, the minimum delight experience that my offering, product with services, plus consulting maybe, plus packaging, needs to have. And what is my pricing structure? And this is the latter, is also something that in a few seconds we're going to talk with Geo as well, because pricing structure is a really important thing. And we forget that something, right? Do you have a competitive view? Do you go for bias centricity? Do you go for non-traditional tactics? Whose problem are you trying to serve, right? It's part of your business model. That's a little bit more harder in the financial industry if you don't really know that, right? So you go in with the technical part, but you need to actually come with a story, right? Am I actually going to bundle with some of the technology that you have? Am I going to give you a freebie trial pricing? It doesn't really work in fintech, right? This is about mitigating risk. Right? Do you come with a revenue sharing solution, right? A kickback for the consumers or a kickback for the software company you work with or a kickback for the bank. The more you use it, the less you pay, right? So you're dealing with an industry that's already inherent financially focused.
Yep.
You better have your pricing model really thought out because otherwise they're going to do it for you.
Okay. Very quickly, in the future, let's think about the future of FS using AI. So we've talked about some of the applications that are currently being automated. What are the applications that you think are going to be automated and really going to make a huge impact? So if I ask you to put a prediction hat and tell everyone what is the next big thing in FS that is going to be automated if it has not yet been. Having said that, I would ask everyone who's watching this show, if you've not yet asked a question, please put that question in the comment section. I will take all of your questions, mind you. And also, please don't forget to like and share because we've already hit 50% of the target. So we are 54 already out of that 100 likes that I was looking for. Let's get that to 100. So please like and share this video as many times as you want. So, okay, Marc. Where is it all going? What is the future?
So you see 3 steps. One is operational processes.
Okay.
Fintech fintech, AI future, some of the futures here now. It's the combination of robotic process automation or intelligent robotic process automation and interactive bots. So you use a bot to open an account, you use a bot to open a credit card, you use a bot to upgrade a credit card, and some 40, 50 different processes behind there are pulled and orchestrated together to an AI-driven bot that understands how it takes this input and brings it to that output. That sounds incredibly mundane, but it takes around 35 screens in an average credit card company to actually get you that physical card. Sometimes it's literally cut and paste or retype the same information. Yeah, you'll be surprised. Which explains in the US why you sometimes still get a credit card with your name misspelled while you type your name in on the original application. So that's operation. To keep in mind what's important is the 80-20 rules, that the bots have a moment then when it turns out that you're that outlier, or when you're pushing data to make that outlier, that you go to a human being that directly helps you and can put you back, not just, and now I escalate, the famous agent at the IVR. The second, what we'll see more and more is the whole management of processing. So that's not just the botification, but a faster throughput of processes, lending, mortgages, etc., and dealing with, again, my exception and making it a little bit more customized. I'm not saying that banks are going to sell more customized products, but if you sell one pizza with 14 ingredients, you can make 14,238 variations. Yep. And you can all manage the risk because they're actually portfolios of 40. Then we assume that ham and cheese is the same as cheese and ham. Some people really want that different. The third is actually really where in today's world is exposure and risk. Risk management on your portfolio, risk management on your investment, risk management on your reserves, right? Risk management around your compliance. As I just said, risk-adjusted profitability index is one of the most glorious things that a Basel III can do because it actually lowers your gold reserves at the national bank. Mm-hmm. Wow. If you have less cost for credit because you need less reserves and you have more prediction of profit, right? You're doing pretty good as a bank, actually. And our guest today is all about that insight in that risk, etc. So it's not a surprise when I top those three things that we have this category as a speaker today or as a guest today. So I'm pretty excited to have him.
Okay, interesting you mentioned that. So let me talk about a bit about them. So one such startup that focuses on financial services is AIDA Technologies, based out of Singapore. AIDA is a specialist AI ML solution provider for the banking and insurance industry. Their capabilities are built through award-winning projects with top banks and insurance companies in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, India, and Hong Kong. The health insurance claims processing and fraud detection product is live in several countries and has won the SFF 2017 and the Tech Blazer Awards. AIDA Technologies CEO is Dr. Tan Geok Leng, and he's a veteran in the ICT industry with over 30 years of experience. GL, as we call him, he spent his first 15 years in the industry working in R&D at Motorola, consulting at Scientific Generics in Cambridge, England, and as a managing director of Goldtron Telecommunications, a company that designed and launched Singapore's first type-approved GSM mobile handset. The next 15 years he spent in the government, initially in the Infocom Development Authority of Singapore, IDA, as CTO, and then later in A-Star, where he headed the Institute for Infocom Research, I2R as they call it, as its executive director. Dr. Tan obtained his PhD from Cambridge in 1990. Let me bring Dr. Tan to the show. Hello, Dr. Tan. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me. It's a very interesting conversation so far.
Good stuff. So we are talking about AI in FS, and your startup is doing exactly that. Before I start talking about that, guys, if you've not still liked the show, please press the like button. And also, please be ready with your questions. Put them in the comment section, and I'll pick all of the questions. Having said that, LinkedIn has recently let me down because there are not many questions coming from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn guys, the entire professional networking platform, if you're watching, anyone watching on there, I want to know what questions do you have in your mind, and please put that in the question in the section there. And also don't forget to like and share this particular episode. So Dr. Tan, I have given a kind of a high level explanation, but it'll be great if you can talk about your product, your company. First of all, about yourself. Did I do some justice to your background, or did I miss anything?
You've done very well. You've done very well. I think we have a chance of a lifetime, right? How many times you have opportunities like that, right? So what happened is I spent 5 years in R&D, working in Singapore's R&D organization called AIDA, and I was the head of the institute with 600 researchers. 300 of them are PhD level researchers, and we had capability across the spectrum, right? Across from data mining, communications, speech, vision, and the lot, right? We could really transform the world. I have 30 years experience, best time of my life, right? Salaries paid by government, 600 smart people, opportunity to say, how do you apply it, right? The problem we had was that the researchers were too academic. They were too focused on writing papers, right? So the reason why I was got in there was because I had the balance between industry and research. So I could, number one, understand what industry was looking for, and number two, understand what people were trying to do, right? Because when you're doing research, I said there are two kinds of people, right? The one kind of people is they know how to do a lot, but they're super cautious. They're super cautious because their training makes them very cautious, right? Right? By the time they say, I'm ready, the world's gone by, right? Then there are other group who done a little, but they say it's so much, right? So I need to know who is real and who is not, give the bets to the right people, and then make it work, right? So during that time in R&D, I managed to connect the institute to a large number of really industry companies, the largest bank in Singapore, the largest telco in Singapore. We had a 3-year partnership with Baidu. We are working with NEC, McLaren, and so on, right? So at that time, we're applying technology in quite a lot of variety of verticals, right? But there's one group that was really outstanding. Those are our data mining group, right? It's really doing fantastic work. We won a Kaggle competition and so on. So I knew the group is very strong. And when we work with our financial partners, we could say that we are delivering solutions, and they won awards as a result of work we do with them, right? Okay, so now what? I had a chance, a group of us came out, right? Huge risk, right? Working in government in Singapore actually is quite good, comfortable, pay you well, opportunity, but once in a lifetime opportunity. So group of us came out 4 years ago and formed AIDA. Right?
Okay. So it's a 4-year-old organization?
That's right. That's right.
Perfect. Okay, so I know that you started, how's the journey been since you started? I know that you started with only 4 employees or 3 employees, right? And now
right.
you have a big team of around about 40 plus. So how's the journey being from being a little startup, I think in a room, I would imagine, to a place where you could actually hire a floor or something?
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. When we started, it was a very, very small operation. And one of the things we wanted to do was really, how do you get noticed? How do you get noticed? Because we said that we had track record when we were in government, but when you're in government, you have a prestige of the government behind you, right? Your R&D institute, it opens all kind of doors. When you go out, you're on your own, right? So we had some runway for a while, but we need to establish a name. So we had a strategy. It was a Singapore FinTech Festival, the first FinTech Festival run by the MAS in Singapore, the inaugural one. We immediately joined the accelerator, right? So the company was formed in September. We joined and we won the award in the Singapore FinTech Accelerator, right? So that kind of gave us some visibility. So that concept in 2016 is now a live product running in a major bank in Malaysia, right? So just now when Marc was saying, how do you apply analytics? The way we apply analytics is we see 3 very distinct market segments. One of them is how do you get more revenue? how to get more revenue, which is upsell, cross-sell, targeted selling, and all that kind of thing, right? Then number 2 is how do you improve processes? How do you improve operational efficiency, automation, that kind of thing, right? And the third one is managing risk and compliance, right? So we do all 3. The first one is for the CEO, the second one is the COO, and the last one is for the board. Because if they get wrong, the CEO may lose his job, right? So we actually have solutions. We use the same technology stack, and then depending on the application area, we build solutions for either revenue, automation, or risk and compliance.
Okay. So, well, it's been a journey from to grow where you are at the moment. You must have had a lot of challenges, right? So share some challenges that you've had, and so that people who are watching this and they want to set up a startup, which is very big these days. Everyone wants to get to do. Most of the people who I know would want to jump and start a startup, but they are not. They know about the win stories, the hardship that you go through, the challenges that you go through. That I think needs to be discussed. So tell us what all challenges did you face?
So many, right? So I'll give you a few examples, right? We come up with technologies our base because we think we are very, very strong technology. But as you go into the market, you soon realize that a technology by itself is not enough, way not enough, right? Because people look for solutions. So you may have the best algo, but you cannot build an end-to-end solution that automate the whole thing and put something in and get a result out. You don't have a solution. So you have to round out your technology with the other parts that maybe are not so sexy, but necessary. My CTO, fantastic woman, my CTO said this. She said, a car, you may have the most wonderful engine, but you don't have the steering wheel, you don't have the doors and don't have chassis. It's not a car, right? So we need to build up the other areas so we can offer end-to-end solution. Another area is that you need domain knowledge. Just because you can build a very good algorithm, but the best solution comes from the marriage between algorithm plus domain knowledge. Then you can do that optimization and create solutions that make sense for the customer. All too often, if you just use an algorithm, you may machine learning is not perfect, right? AI is not perfect. AI will have areas where it fails. But if you understand the domain and you understand what the technology can do, you can find ways to mitigate where it fails, and you know where it fails. So it's that kind of solution that makes a really workable solution. Blindly applying will not work, right? And the third area is really, really challenging. It's the area, I think Marc speaks about it as well. It's the area of business model, right?
Okay.
What do you do? Are you selling a tool? Are you a tool maker selling a tool? Or are you a platform owner that you use the tool to build a solution that brings people around, right? That's related to that is whether you do a B2B or B2C. All those are actually issues that we weren't even thinking about. But right now, 4 years into the road, it becomes very clear because the value you create depends so much on answering this question right. Does that help?
Okay, Marc, do you want to add something to that, or ask any questions on this to Gio?
Yeah, so Gio, first is I'm super excited that we are together in the show. So it's having looked to some of the material that was shared that people can find public as well. I think it's amazing how far you guys have come in relatively that short time. And the reason I'm saying that is people tend to forget that 4 years ago, creating and developing an AI-based solution that combined artificial intelligence, deep learning, data and domain data incorporation, and analytics wasn't that easy because there were no labeling platforms, there were no outsource all my domain knowledge and get it back into my algorithm. You guys had to do a lot of pioneering, and I think that gives you an incredible benefit because there's a difference between understanding how AI tools work or just using them, right? And you guys have that benefit. And still, 2 questions I'm going to have about your domain knowledge and about scaling your solution, since you're partly dependent of customizing something over that firewall. And I think for a lot of people that go for enterprise solutions, this is going to be quite important. So one, how did you take your domain knowledge and apply that on your whole solution and on the business model that you did. And second, in your delivery model, how much is directly reusable to scale, and what is the effort that an enterprise, a company, a bank, or an insurance need to do, and how do you pitch that?
So two questions. Number one is domain knowledge. How do you build domain knowledge? And number two is how do you scale, right? Both are fantastic question. We are right up there thinking of this thing all the time. Domain knowledge is very, very hard to get. For people coming from R&D, none of us actually work in either a bank or an insurance company, but none, right? What worked for us was perhaps our reputation. If you are in Singapore, the organization that we came from had a very high reputation. We worked for the largest bank, largest telco, and so on. So we had good reputation. That opened some doors, right? That opened some doors. But that's all it does. Open some doors, and what you do makes a huge difference. So our very first customer said this to us, right? We just gave them some data. We didn't tell them anything about the data. They could make sense of it, and we realized we're sitting on a gold mine, right? Yep. So our reputation opened the door. Our people's capability was such that we could make sense of the data. You know what I suspected? I suspected they say, hey, take some data, go away, don't disturb me, that kind of thing. But we could create value, and that gave traction. I see it again and again, and the reason is because the team is amazing. The team is just crazy and amazing and works tremendously hard, right? I think sometimes you need a little bit of can do, daring do. I think if you, this is where also another point I want to say. If you compare working in a multinational, I worked in a multinational before, you compare working in a government, I also worked in a government many, many years, and you do a startup. If you take a multinational mentality, a government mentality, and try and put it into a startup, you will not work. Because there are too many things you're worried about, right? There are too many things. You got to make sure everything is right and so on. By the time you worry about it, you're not anywhere. You almost have to close an eye and say, well, go in and do it, and then be smart enough so that you overcome. So my team of people, especially my CTO, is really, really smart person and works very hard to overcome this and build that confidence. Because we've done that, now we get more repeat projects and so on. We build that know-how. And today I can walk into any bank, or our people can walk in a bank or insurance. We can talk their lingo, and it's not an issue at all. But it wasn't possible 4 years ago, right? So that's how we build know-how. Find an opportunity, show that we can learn like crazy, right? That's one part. Your second question is about scalability and repeatability. Tremendously important, right? The first one we do obviously have got a high degree of customization, because we are learning as we go. But as you do that, you have to think about what can be abstracted out and what can be standardized, right? You always have we're thinking about how do you do that, so that once you get to the point you can abstract out. Whenever you go to a new installation, we keep our fingers crossed. Can you get 70% standard, right? There's always some degree of customization. We say there are 2 layers of customization, maybe 3. The first layer of customization is this, that how do you integrate into an environment, whether through API or whether through direct integration. That definitely need to do. The second is the customization based on that specific installation. Bank ABC may have certain legacy things that you have to implement. So the second layer of customization. The third layer of customization is when you cross country. Then you got language and new local rules that you worry about. That's how we try and make 70% the same, so that we can scale easily.
Thank you. I'm not going to let you go off the hook yet. So I want to again be incredibly positive about the answer, because I think there's a lot of value in it. And let me try to re-summarize some of the guidance of your CTO as well there. Next time in Singapore, we definitely need to have a coffee or beer together on that. Which I hope will be sooner than we all, right? With all the breakthroughs we're now getting, that would be nice. So when I talk about a minimum delight experience, and this is more for our viewers, the emphasis on the word minimum. As Gio says, if this is your product, right, you can think about version 5, version 6, what should it be? But just think of the first Tesla Model S. It had that big screen in it. It had sensors, or it had the wires ready to plug in sensors. But it didn't do autopilot. It actually didn't do traffic updates. It didn't even have the lines on your parking sensor. It just had a camera. But they foresaw this is sooner or later going to be needed. So this needs to be prepared in the minimum delight experience so we can show there's a promise. But we'll focus on the most minimum part. That is, can I make it to 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour in less than 3.1 seconds? That was the minimum delight experience they offered with the first, right? And from there, they build up their model. If you go to the first iPod, the same story. The iPod wasn't successful. It was the iTunes ecosystem behind it, and later for the iPhone, that allowed me seamlessly to press a button and to download music or to download an app. And again, it was the fault of what is the minimum product that needs to go to market and what's the minimum premise and promise that needs to be in there. And I think you guys really handled that well. Now, for our viewers as well, I can imagine someone sits there like, yeah, but I don't really get it. How, Geo, should I get today? If I don't have the domain knowledge, what should I do? Should I go to Crowdflower? Should I buy somebody in with lots of documents? Should I beg my first customer to let me train on all their data? How do I get that deep learning algorithms with its generic layer? And let me get that question back, and then I'll go to the next one.
Okay. So getting a foot in the door is super important, right? Because from the outside, it's very hard to know what is really important on the inside. Right. What you see on the outside and inside is so different, yes. And without prior experience working in a bank, you will not have that knowledge, right? So we had no choice, but we have to somehow find a way to convince people to take a bet with us, get a foot in the door, and once you get in, don't let go, let go. Make sure you satisfy the customer. We meet with our customer every week, and every week we show some progress, right? And you maintain the momentum and maintain the trust, so that they are able to reinvest with you, right? Because it's very, very hard to sell into a large organization. It's very, very hard to get the support in a very large organization because they are so busy, they run all over the place. So if you can find a way to keep their interests alive, make sure you get a sponsor who is senior enough, and then whenever you go to the meeting, you deliver value, then you get that sponsor supporting you and the team supporting you, then you build. That's been our model. Yeah.
Right. And that worked because you guys came in with a reputation of where you individually come from, and the reputation of the institutes that you worked on. You had a track record. I want to focus for a few seconds on those that are watching, and it's like, dude, I'm 25. I just graduated. I am, in my perception, brilliant, but don't have the track record, and my university is great, but there's a competitive base. And for those, I would like to say, if you have a great idea, get an advisory board. Get an advisory board for people from tech and the industry that directly can coach you and help you and mentor you. And I hear you say, and how do I pay that? Well, you either give them options or you give them a share portfolio that they won't get and can't invest if they have at least for some time in it. You make sure your own investment isn't dilutable when you get your first investment. You do your first round in friends and family. You then do a convertible loan long before you go to angels. Get your base up, but most important, get somebody who has a legal background, get somebody who has an industry background in the network, and get somebody who has a tech background in the network, and make that your minimum advisory boards to get going. So you at least can learn from them, and they can give you the entrance because of their reputation. They can help you to get better in the industry. But most important, they make sure your trademarks, your IP, and all those kind of things are filed as well when you start. So that's for them. Now back to Geo, because you guys had a phenomenal benefit. You were, first is you yourself, your background, even just your PhD from Cambridge, all these things open door. But then you got to scale. You need to, as you said, make a solution. You said, well, I train it on this generic level, and then I'll create another layer where a customer can say, now I add my secret sauce, how I do this generic process, and I need to have a tool that brings my own data in it, and I need to train. So you need to get the tooling in your solution, and you need to get the coaching to the customer, which you limit your scaling with the amount of people that you have, because you can't get 50 customers. So again, you try to automate that. Can you walk us a little bit in that layering of, I make something generic, I make something for the secret sauce of a customer, and then I try to automate as much of the process? Because I think that's, for B2B startups, a really important part.
Really fantastic. It's related to the third point I mentioned. It's talk about the business model, right? How you scale. Are you a tool maker, or are you a platform? Trying to create a platform, right? As we develop, we realize that we're really a tool maker. That means I provide solutions to people. Either I provide a solution that does something, or I can provide you a platform which you can then build solutions on top of something. So we have this thing called the 3+3+3, right? So we look at the customer and see to what extent we are able to get traction. If we feel that the customer just want a solution, then make it very easy. I give you a solution in a box. It does ABC, and it does it well, hopefully, and it gives you the result you're looking for. But many large organizations do not want a spot solution. I want to solve this problem later, I want to solve another problem, and so on. You realize that a lot of the solutions, in fact, for many solutions, maybe 50 to 70% are the plumbing, the infrastructure, the setup, and so on. So for those kind of customers, we say to them, I can give you what's called a platform solution, in which we'll do the integration and all that, and the first three I build for you, right? So you get a solution, you get a benefit straight away. The next three I build with you, so that your people, your analyst people, can learn how to use it. The libraries are there, the feature sets are there, the workflow and all that are there. And the last three, you build and we supervise, right? So I can offer them both a spot solution and a platform solution.
Okay. But that's really important. Sorry, Shelley. That's really important, because so many people think that an AI solution is just like a standard piece of software.
Yep.
It's ready-made and I can use it. And where it goes wrong is the moment you go to an enterprise, say, I have a one model fits all solution, and then they say, that's great. What about the data behind my firewall? You can go to two financial institutions, and they can follow the same risk compliance, but the way that they deal with risk, or the way that they try to upsell or cross-sell, use customer data, makes the total difference. They can be in the same market, the same products, etc., and yet they are different. We all know the example. Why do you go to an HSBC and not to a Citibank? Or why do you go to a Citibank and an HSBC? What makes for you as a consumer or a business the difference, right? And the worst is, of course, the integratability by that company. It is absolutely absurd that at some financial institutions, you can have a business account and a private account, and the only way in the US you can transfer your own salary is by sending yourself a paper check. I mean, it's the same bank, right? You should be able to EFT that directly. It's within the same thing, and it's 2020 people. But what's more important is, back to what Gio says, there comes a moment that your pre-boxed solution still needs a customization part. And if you have a business model that says, well, either I'll have a tool, you do it yourself, or I have an approach that coaches your people to learn to do it themselves. I do it for you, do it with you, you call me when you have issues, right? A sort of mentor model that also tells you something, because your business model is actually tool plus asset plus a series of consulting. And the farther you go in time, the more the consulting goes from do it to coaching and supervising, which means your business model in general, not just for Geo, but for companies who want to do that, need to think about, my product can be commoditized, my product has a maximum amount of revenue it can do, then I can scale up and create extra revenue with services. And maybe above that time, I cannot do it myself. And I need to say a market that's under that, I need to have a partnership and somebody who understands partnership models in that market, and then start working with the Deloitte, the Accentures, the Tatas, the Cognizants of this world, and say, well, there is a ISV licensing or model. You can sell or reposition my product, then that part of the revenue is yours, and you only pay the license to my consulting. And those are things people say, yeah, 5 years from now. And I'm like, no. You don't have to have it solved, but you need to have thought about it when you start. What is my business model, go to market? What's my value prop? And again, kudos to how you broke that. That was really good.
Okay. So what I've heard and learned from this little conversation, I didn't want to interrupt as well because it was so passionately discussed between the two of you, and it was like, if I button, it will make it, it will derail the conversation. But what I learned was from UGL is that nothing succeeds like success. So you have a little success story, and then you build upon that as you grow, and that was very good. One thing which came to mind was when you went to these banks and insurers and said, give us some data, didn't they turn around and well, I have an answer to that question because I did that exactly the way I did it. But how was it? Didn't they say to you, we've got actuarials, what do you know about my business? Because that is a question that is always turned around and thrown at you saying, well, we know our business, we have actuarials who are great statisticians and modelers, what do you know?
Very interesting, because exactly that's what happened. Not just do they have actuarials, they also have teams of analytics experts, right? So we are at this stage in time where every single one of our customer would have a big team of either actuarials or a big team of actuarials and also data scientists, right? So it is a tough game. We have to demonstrate that we know what we are doing. In fact, what's happened in this particular domain, there are two skill sets. One is the technology skill set, the other one is the domain skill set, right? So usually, with groups of people who are purely domain, they cannot beat us in terms of our technology, right? The people with the technology do not have the domain. So the combination of technology and domain now is really the secret sauce that makes us really very special. Because if you just take technology and apply blindly without understanding the domain, you cannot get as far as what we can do. Or it's really understanding the domain.
Well, the reason why I mentioned that was that when I was working at Accenture, there was my insurance lead was a gentleman by the name of Andy Patton. And Andy Patton wanted me to meet one of his clients who was an insurer. It took me 6 months, a coffee every week, to get some data out of him, because every time I asked for data, he turned around and said, what do you know? I've got actuarials. And I said, well, some data and I'll show you something. Just give me some little bit of data. And it took me 6 months, and I'm sure it was more than 12 coffees to actually get some data out of him. And the data they gave me was a problem that they didn't even think was a problem for a long time. But it was around about $500 million problem when it actually came out. But anyways, that's a different story. But that went so good. That was so well received that it opened up a huge door for us. Old story going back. Okay, guys.
When you have the chance, you must make them good sense of it, right? Opportunity only comes once, right? I'll tell you about a story about actuarial. Actually, what's happened is we were trying to raise some money, all right, in our past series, and one of the VC who was evaluating us really had somebody who was actuarial, right? Very, very well. Actually, I won't say who it is because very, very senior person, right? And they look at us and says, you guys are a bunch of machine learning people. What do you know about insurance, right?
Yep.
And he wanted to test us, right? And he says, okay, I'm going to bring you to meet the head of the president of the Actuarial Society in Singapore, right? So she arranged a meeting so that I think the whole idea was to see whether we can have a good conversation, a meaningful conversation. The outcome of that was we got invited to speak at the annual actuarial event where we bring all the actuarial and show how machine learning will transform that field. And when I spoke, of course, at the start, I felt like you're walking in the lion's den, right? Because these are the people who are not your natural supporters, right? But as I go into the event, there was some exhibition, and we found one of the exhibition, one of the top reinsurer who's exhibiting at the place. The chairman of the company said, the future, AI is the future of insurance and reinsurance, right? So the people who are looking ahead can see it already, but it takes some time for it to ripple through. Yeah.
No, but there is a problem. mean, I understand where the problem is. The problem is that though the senior level people do know what the vision is, what the future is, the people below are all IT people, and for them everything could be coded. And that was one thing I always had I had to battle out, because AI is not all about coding. It's about business outcomes. It's about finding understanding of the business. But IT, the first thing they do is decouple themselves from the business, because what they're answering is what you call a requirement document, and that they don't think outside of that requirement document. Mark, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think this is really important, right? I'm going to give 2 points. One about actuarians and their change of attitude, and the second about the clarity as a AI-centric company. The first, it used to be the joke. It used to be the joke 15, 20 years ago. If you said, what's an actuarian actually, which most tech people didn't know what it was, right? The answer used to be, oh, somebody who found accountancy too exciting. and that used to be. But today's actuarians are actually data scientists with an incredible knowledge of data models, and more important, the data and the assumption behind it. Now, here you come with your AI solution, and actually the most actuarians are going to ask you this question, like, what data did you originally use to train your algorithms, your ML, your deep learning, to who supervised that? Because if I go for medical, just outside insurance for a second, it makes a real big difference if you say my solution is trained by the 5 top oncologists of the country, and we use the last 10 years of studies from Johns Hopkins, Cambridge University, or we had 5 interns from Grey's Anatomy on the couch, and they were available that day to do it. So your ability as a company to say, this was the training data, these were the people that supervise the training, and this is how we mitigate risk when we get unexpected outcomes, addresses 3 things of a modern actuarian. You have clarity, and I can always find back what your original bias in the models was. Second, I understand the training of your people, so I also understand the logic that will and won't be in the models. And 3, you're giving me the ability myself to recognize unintended outcomes, outliers that nobody had foreseen because the world was different when we trained, and the ability to mitigate that, which as a risk-averse person, as an actuarian, is a really comfortable feeling. So I think that's an important part to put there, both the actuarian change of role, as well the way you need to articulate as an AI-driven company this kind of background behind your models and tools. Because otherwise, Jelly, you said that otherwise you come in a company and you're just dead before you make your pitch.
Absolutely. Okay.
Sorry, can I comment, Mark?
Go on.
Are you familiar with the MAS FEAT guidelines? FEAT for AI, and in Singapore, there's also the PDPC's Model AI Governance Framework. Are you familiar with these 2 documents?
Yes. I have the incredible pleasure to serve with much brighter minds at the World Government Summit. There is an AI governance panel. Normally, we physically come here together, and they bring really the most brightest thought leaders there. And since there was 1 seat available, they asked me as well.
Right. So maybe your input has gone into that. They're talking exactly the same thing about governance, about how you build your model, and whether you look at the source of your information, and then who approves it, and who decides what algorithms you use, whether human in the loop and all that. All those are in the model governance framework.
Yeah, it's one of my highlights last year, just before Christmas. And just before I had to go to the hospital for some back surgery, I published a short article on Forbes, which was all about AI and data transparency, trying to explain this to laymen. Thank you again for the 42,000 people that liked it, by the way. No, I normally don't get those numbers on my publication. It's way too nerdy. But Gio, you really hit this, right? Most developers don't realize that looking to guidelines, compliance around a industry, about a domain, is actually not a threat, but it's a phenomenal opportunity to come into your first customers that you pitch and say, like, listen, this is happening in the industry. These are the guidelines. These are some thoughts where they're going. We already implemented that in our solution. This is how forward thinking we are. And sometimes it's not a technology thing, right? It's just, you already do it. You just make the data available about what your solution does, because you need to log and detail the developer anyway.
Our customers are all very, very conservative. The minute the regulator comes up with something, they'll turn around and ask us, are you doing this? Show us you are doing this, and that kind of thing.
Yes, just check us. You're checking the box. Just keep the regulator away from me, please, please, please. If you do that, I'll take you. I'll take you. If you just check all my boxes, please. Yeah.
Okay, guys. This can continue forever, but let me very, very quickly say one thing, guys. We've hit 75 likes so far, so we're just 25% short of the target, which is 100%. If you're watching the show, you've got a question, this is your moment, because very soon I'll stop taking the questions, which I will anyways after this. Before I get to the audience questions, Dr. Tan, do you have any question for us? So your chance for asking us questions, 1, 2, 3, as many as you want.
Wow, fantastic. I think, let me ask Mark and you, okay? As a small startup, you're always squeezed by the big guys, right? You're trying to get your first project with a bank, insurer, or whatever. And these big guys look at you and say, nothing. And they always try and squeeze you, right? Squeeze you either do it for free. We'll do this POC for free. Or if they give you some money, they want a lot of outcome. And then, by the way, I want to own all the IP, right? How do you how do you navigate this? How do you get fair value?
I'm going to give you 2 anecdotes. One, when we started with Watson, we were actually a startup. We were outside the IBM ecosystem. We were a $150 million startup, but we behaved like a startup. We thought like a startup. We actually had to, because, as you just said, corporate thinking wasn't going to give us the agility. And we were with this large industrial company that, and they did exactly say, well, we want it for free. If we train this, you're not going to use it, yada, yada, yada. And I basically smiled and I said, this is Kevin. Kevin is one of my right hands. Kevin is engaged with Rachel. And if Kevin doesn't get paid for his work here, Kevin is not going to be able to go home and do the shopping for Rachel. And then Rachel basically is never going to become his wife, because she is not going to be a fiancé of a guy who doesn't bring the bacon home. So I'm sorry, we're not doing this. But what I can tell you is, here's my personal mobile cell number. Not my business, it's my personal cell number. The moment we do a project, you and I will have a relationship that I commit to you. I'll sit in the steering committee and you can call me. The difference is between traditional software, because there's always a substitute. Might not be an AI substitute, but there's always a substitute. So I said the difference between the traditional players you're looking at now is that you're one of the first customers, so you'll have an incredible say about how we create that solution. But my job is to make sure that solution still can be reused and rescaled to other players without you losing the competitive secret sauce you put in it. So my effort is going to be to ensure that that line between generic and your secret sauce is upheld. And we're going to need to have discussions. And you're going to have a moment of discomfort when 12 of your best engineers enter your office. And that's the moment you can text me and call me. And as long as I'm not asleep, I'll respond. I'm only giving that to you because you're the first in your industry. Now, your direct, and this was total bluff, your direct competitor and I have an appointment next week. Are you going to be first or not? So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes you need to be a little bit bold and take a gamble. But the most important is, you're already talking on an equal basis with a company. You're talking on an equal basis with a human being. And in the end, we choose people and not the brand of a company. If we have a large project and it's about all the risk that I want to mitigate as a project, I'll take a large company because, one throat to choke and I can. But if it's about unique innovation, right, the question is very simple. Do you want to be the first that influence actually this? And what we did with what I recommend some of my the startups I'm on the board with or I'm coaching is like offer them something. Say, no, we're going to give you another kind of kickback. You're going to be one of the first customers. We actually offer you the opportunity to become an investor. You will get options, not free shares, options at a favorable price now that you can decide yourself to vest them or not after X months. And you can ride the benefits, the kickback of what other clients bring in. Are you willing to think like a venture capitalist? Or do you just see us as a vendor you got people around? Because if you think we're just a vendor, a supplier, that's not a relationship we want to have. And I know you viewers will get upset that you need to kiss 1,000 times a frog to find a prince. I know that. But if you get the first round,
you have to find a customer, right? You have to find a customer with the guts to take the bet with a new guy. Actually, we actually were in that kind of situation. We went for a bid, big table, round table, all the senior people, a lot of people. Somebody said straight to me and says, "You are not going to get the project because if I do this thing, you don't have the track record. I will go to some guy who's been out there already with a track record. You're not going to get it." But we were lucky enough that there was another person, a business owner, who said, "I like what you're doing. You bring something and willing to stick the neck out."
Right. Right. And that's also, I find, Marcus Miller has a phenomenal book, Selling is Dead. Daniel Pink has phenomenal videos about the attitude of sales. And both are about two things. One is the ability to have the stamina and the resilience to, like the jack in the box, to bounce back and come up. But the second is to figure out what is the intrinsic motivation of my customer. What does my customer want to do? Do they want to stand on stage with me and glorify to be a great innovator? Do they want to be the hero to show that they nacked and solved a problem within a company? Do they just want to do something technical, brilliant? Or what is it that makes them tick? And if you can't figure out with your team that comes in what that intrinsic motivation is, what it is that they will tell about, share about, brag about with their peers in the industry, you're going in blind. And that means you need to do your homework. You either need to call your network, you need to read up on that person, and most important in that room, you need to come in and shut up about your product and ask them a question about them. Now, no CFO is going to tell you, let me tell you what bothers me, what are my top 10 secrets. But the moment you actually have interviewed 2 or 3 other CFOs in the industry and say, hey, John, I don't know you personally, but we have a common friend and he said I could call you. We're going to pitch to some CFOs. Would you mind having a dinner with us and do a trial run with us? Because then you'll get coached and somebody would say, these are the arguments that probably somebody like me would listen to you. These are the questions you need to ask me to make me think about what you do. And that's the glory of the pitch. We tend to think, oh, I come in with a product and if it's great, they'll buy it. But you got to get them to listen. And I think what you guys did, you had the reputation, so they were already intrigued. You listen to your customer, right, from the stories outside and inside this interview. But the most important is what is, and you guys either by luck or by gut feeling or by listening very well, but you figured out what the intrinsic motivation of the example is of that business buyer was like, no, I'm willing to try this.
And maintain their trust. Like the person who supported us, we'll never let them down. We will do whatever we can to make sure we deliver because they put their neck out to give us the chance. We must fulfill that trust.
Right. It is, and it's about say as you do as you say, never break your promises. And if things go wrong, let them know ahead of everyone else, like, this is what we're doing to mitigate. Because nobody cares in management or executive role if there's a problem. What I want to do is, what are my 3 scenarios to solve this? Or what are the scenarios you're doing to solve this? This is consultancy 101. But we tend to forget especially from a technology point of view, we're so full of our knowledge. We're so full of our product. We tend to forget that we're sitting with another human being that wants to be heard, wants to be comforted, and wants to know that they can trust you.
It's not about money. It's not about profit. It's making sure you make it right.
Right. Will you make me look bad? Will you make me look good?
Absolutely.
And what does make me look good mean for me? Right?
I think there is another aspect of that. It's about making them look good is one thing, but what happens if they look bad? Because that is a bigger impact. And I'll tell you from my experience being working for an end user or a corporate, where if someone had come to me and said, I will make $100 million for you using this technology and this and that and do this, I will only take you to the board for that approval unless I'm sure, because if I take you to the board and you say $100 million and your fees say $2 million or $20 million, that is fine. And what happens is that if you don't deliver to that $100 million and you deliver only $5 million, then you can simply say, oh, okay, I can give away my fee. But what it does to my reputation, it kills it. Because I was the one who backed you guys, took you to the board, you will go. You have nothing to do with my organization thereafter. But I have to live there for the next 10, 15 years. What will I do then? So I have to be very, very sure and very, very confident on, what you guys are bringing to the table. Will that be delivered? Will that give me what you're promising? So that is an important aspect which people miss. People only look at, I will make you look good, but no one thinks what will happen if I make you look bad for that. And that exactly happened with one of my colleagues. Before I joined one large organization, we were told that, when I joined the organization, at the basis of that particular technology, because I was to use that, and I don't want to name them, I was to use that. I was told, don't use that 3-letter word, because we lost $2.5 million. And so don't talk about that product, let alone anything else. And I said, but you hired me to use that product. Now you don't have that product. What do I do? But I realized that someone had actually damaged the entire thing, and it was that company itself, but they disappeared. So now it is on the incumbent, on the people inside the organization to build that relationship again.
So Gio, you must with your team. Let's go a little bit to the skills of your people, right? You have a heavy lifting CTO. We already heard. You sit there. How do you coach your team? Because sooner or later there are too much opportunities for you to personally go in. How do you coach your team to understand those skills? What do you look for when you get new people? Because I think it's a very interesting thing for our viewers to hear as well.
Wow, it's not easy. Not easy. I think there are different skill sets, right? Technical people are also a little bit special, right? Sometimes the technical people are technical because they are so sharp and so narrow, right? So my ideal person is a person with a T, right? Very and very broad. A little bit hard to find. There are a lot of people that are very broad but not so deep. So for a tech organization, not so good. They are good at sort of going out and talk, but they cannot do the deep. The people who are very deep, very few can do the very broad, right? So understand the context of how everything fit together. So what I try to do is try to make sure my team understand how everything hangs together. Because it's not just about this particular block or that particular block. It's how this block with this block with that block and how they all come together. Because I think if you can just make a block work, you will not have the success and the performance that's needed at a system level. Because you need to understand what the system at the end is trying to do and say, how is this block working with the other block, how they come together, right? I try to make sure that people understand the big picture.
Right.
Okay, guys, before I get to the next question of yours, I must say we have 77 likes at the moment. So if you haven't liked this so far, please like it. My target is 100 likes today because last episode we got 100 likes, so we should be able to repeat that particular option again. So if you have not pressed the like button, please press it now. And also, if you've got a question, please put that in the comment section, and I'll take that in just 5 minutes. Any other question, GL, you have for us?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a broad question. Actually, I think this question may be relevant to a lot of startups, right? Actually, two questions. One question is this: a lot of people start up, maybe people from our kind of background, start up with technology. Technology is what we have, and then do you apply the technology to make a tool, or do you apply the technology to build a platform, right? So how do you decide whether A or B? That's one. The second question really is, if you are doing a startup, where to do the startup? Should you be in the valley, or should you be in Southeast Asia, or should you be in China, or wherever? Because I think there's a difference. I have my own views, but I'd like to hear what you think.
Shall you want to start at one, or shall I do?
Your question, Mark. You want to answer that?
Okay, good. I always ask people when they ask me that question. I said, well, how comfortable are you to be a small fish in a big pond?
Mm-hmm.
And how powerful can you be when you're the biggest fish in a smaller pond?
Mm-hmm.
The one line is always follow the money. We all have network. We all have a starting network. And it's ironically that I don't really believe the physical location of your company today isn't that important anymore. I do think being in connection with a development hub, whether it is Silicon Valley, Silicon Alley, New York, Amsterdam, Berlin, Frankfurt, Singapore, they all now have their own ecosystem to facilitate startups.
Mm-hmm.
What is important for investors is actually where you incorporate. So do you have a Delaware corporation? Do you have a London one? And where is the holding? And it sounds very weird, but for an investor, there are tax benefits. There are all kind of things, how you write things off or how you deal with your wealth. So location is only important if you are absolutely in need for resources. So I'm going to do something, I have a shitload of money to burn, and I really need to have the best, blah, blah. But we also know there's a demand and supply part, right? If I go to Silicon Valley, I will pay different prices for data scientists and machine learning developers than I would put in Calcutta or I would put in Taipei, to give an example. The second is, where are my launching customers going to be, and what market do I want to extend, right? Being Asian-based, right, and looking at the Asian market and the fintech opportunities, I think for AIDA, you stand on a phenomenal positive thing, because you don't have to enter the Asian market, you are in the Asian market, or the Asian Pacific market. It makes it easy for you to go to New Zealand, to Australia. Yet at the same time, the moment you want to break into Western Europe or you want to break into the US, you're going to need to have at least one Anglo-Saxon functioning financial institution, which could be like a DBS in Singapore, or right, or directly you have to move to a client in New Zealand or in Australia to bring that. Because it goes back to Shelley's last part. If I look to the grid, the typical Gartner grid, ability to execute and your vision, do you bring me some upper right-hand quarter customers? And as Shelley said, you got to earn them. You almost have to buy them. You have to get them in. So 10 years ago, I would say the location is everything, right? If you're a startup, you're not in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, forget about it. But that pool is now so crowded that unless you already came from Stanford, and unless you're already living there, and unless you already have that network, and unless you already know some investors, some of the most successful startups I've been working on the last 5 years, the middle of nowhere in Maryland, a combination of England and the US, the Netherlands, Berlin, Zurich. That also goes to your second part, right? You start with a point solution, or you go to a platform. Shazam started as a point solution. Holding your phone, listen to the music. It's actually the mood killer for a party. You would be in a party, you say, naming 5 songs that are #1 in the Billboard Top 100, of which the lyrics are not part of the song title, or the song title is not part of the lyrics. And you could get people crazy, so that people go to the internet. You hear a song and you're like, it's a, and Shazam already says, no, this is Ed Sheeran's version of Jimi Hendrix Along the Watchtower. But they started as a point solution, and they had hoped to connect, but they knew they needed to build up enough credibility as a point solution before they could connect to the platforms of Apple. And now you can buy this song on Apple Music. Now you can hear it at Spotify, etc. They didn't have it from day one, right? They just had a great idea, and they thought advertising revenue was going to be the monetization model. So sometimes you just change because the market changes. If you go for enterprise solutions, I'll be really clear. If you can't integrate in a business model, if you can't integrate as a platform within platforms, if you can't layer your solution that means enterprise, you're going to be commoditized. Your spot solution is going to be absorbed by one of the big software players. Either they buy you for nothing, or they build their own substitute. You're going to be hit left, right, and center because you lose your flexibility and your differentiation from day one. But that's my opinion.
Okay. Let's get to the audience questions. Audience, first thing first, if you've got any question you haven't asked, this is your last moment, because we will just finish off with your questions starting from the first question. Okay. The first message is from Nitin Dang. Hi, he says, hello, sir. Hi, Nitin. Mark, that was, I think, for you. And both Jill, you too.
Hello.
Nitin says, hello. Hello, Nitin. Venu Madhav, CHPMP, says, hi, Shailendra. Hi, Venu, how are you? There's a question on LinkedIn where Nagendra Shastri says, hi, Nagendra, how are you? How open are regulators in accepting the use of alternate data as part of the AI algorithm? Mark, that's it you. Guys, before Mark takes that question, if you haven't liked, please like now. We're 83. We're just 17 short of 100.
Yeah, let me say this again. Shelley is not allowed to go on holiday if he doesn't get 100 likes this episode. So everybody, help sending Shelley on holiday.
Okay.
So it's Nagendra. I don't know exactly which alternate data you're thinking on. Most regulators are not actually looking to the data you use as part of training your algorithm. They're looking at the compliance that the output of the algorithm has with their regulatory. Most regulatory are looking at a check the box. We have a set of rules. Are you transparent? Are you compliant? Do you meet industry conditions, etc.? So the interesting thing, if we take last week's guest, right? Last week's guest took external data, totally external data, to actually talk about the industry risk and the market risk, which isn't standard part of a risk model anyway, not the way they did it. But the point is not that. The point is that when you're a regulator, say, are you looking to market conditions? Are you looking to SEC filings? Are you looking to da-da-da-da-da? And one way or another, they did that, and they came to conclusions. So compliance, checking the box, is sometimes more important for regulatory than actually what's behind it. That's also a sad thing. That means that compliance is more important than performance or innovation. So don't confuse those two. If you have a great and brilliant idea, do it. Just make sure that you also check some boxes of the regulatory. Otherwise, it's very hard to position your solution.
Okay. You want to add anything to that, GL?
One of the components in the MAS FEAT document was that they wanted you to be aware of what data is coming into the system and the soundness of that data, right? So if you are using alternate data, depending on what the alternate data is if, for example, it's a Facebook post kind of thing, then maybe the reliability of the data is not so good. Whereas if the alternate data is coming from, say, a telco, then maybe it's a little bit more credible. So just be aware of that. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is on Facebook by Ed Saurabh Sharma. He says, "Good morning, Shelly sir. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Mark. He says, I've been a huge fan of IBM Watson. Well, I'm a data science aspirant, and a regular student of IBM cognitive classes. As I mentioned earlier, can you please guide me how to start integrating AI IDEA projects with my data science solutions? Please share me the tips and tricks how to get AI to my day-to-day life thinking or solutions." A very long question. I think he needs a 1 month course of this, because you can't get it in 2 minutes, 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. So I this is not meant as shameless self-promotion, but the first thing I'm going to say is, if you Google my name, when you go to my LinkedIn page, you find a series of articles. One of them is a publication on Medium, the Quick Start Guide to AI. There's some deeper details in the answer I can give you at this moment. I do want to say 3 things. One, the way we define AI is that it's a set of technologies that you orchestrate together and infuse with knowledge, so you can augment, maybe automate one task of a knowledge worker, right? So that means you need to look at processes that say, is there one part in the process that's heavy lifting, the boring, repetitive, mind-numbing, what an insult for an expert, trained, educated person? And could I take that part out, take data in and data out, and support that person? So if it's about comparing 2 documents, it's about reading a compliance document and a product description, could I do the check in the box filling in for that person, so that person can actually use their brain for something more? That's actually where the real golden nugget is. To do that, you need to realize what part of the problem, if you break it down, needs to be solved by rule-based. What can be done by advanced analytics and statistics, like data science traditionally is? What is needed continuously flexibility and change of parameters that it requires machine learning? And do I have the training data, or can I find the training data? So those are some of the things there. But if you just Google my last name, quick startup guide to AI, you find some overviews and tips and tricks that I would get. That. Thank you again for being a fan of Watson. So am I, even in another job and another thing. One is always proud of their accomplishments. Do also not forget that IBM Watson, like Google TensorFlow, like Microsoft Cognitive, is a AI platform on which you need to develop from their generic training your solution. You still need to go to the next level of that secret sauce that next the problem, whether you do inference, discovery, chatbox. This is the same for every AI platform there.
And let me shamelessly promote a couple of things. One is that if you are watching this on YouTube, then you'll find a lot of videos related to data science, analytics, and AI on my channel. So subscribe and press the bell icon, because you will find lots of business related ideas. And if you've not read my book, Making Money Out of Data, that has got 5 different use cases from 5 different industries, and you will get some ideas from the business point of view, not technology point of view. So yeah, there are things available in the marketplace that you can do for free and get ahead. Next step. Saurabh Sharma, he says, also my small comment on the interesting discussion topic of bridging the gap between IT geeks and business community. Well, I think data scientist is a kind of guy which bridges the gap between both of these. Exactly. And I tell you one thing, organizations who've done that, who've put their data scientists who are a conduit between the IT and the business, have very, very successfully gone far ahead other organizations who've put them in IT. Because that's what the first reaction is. Data science, coding, IT, data, so they all put them into IT. But at the moment they move it and create a bridge, use them as a bridge, it works very, very well. And that is, those organizations have been very, very successful. Okay.
I want to go back to something Gio said. I think it's really the most important that the best data scientists, and a lot of them are female, But the best data scientists actually do have what Geo says, the T-shaped profile. They're deep in one thing, but broad in others. And that T-shaped profile is really what makes them that bridge.
Okay, so you mentioned that word female, and I will take a question on that. So Miriam Hochwald, who was one of the ladies on my show, Women in Data Science, a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, she's asked this question. Hi Miriam, how are you? First of all, thank you for asking the question. She says, how would you sell the profile of a female lead startup in data science? I think GL and Mark, you can give an answer to that. Who wants to go first?
I'll let Geo go first this time.
I did not understand the question about needing to sell because my CTO was the head of department at the institute, right? And this department was kind of like a wellspring of so many things, right? We had so many programs, and we are at the point where we are running our people to deploy, working with so many different companies, right? From people working in a factory, people working on HR, people working on auditing, people working in insurance, people working in banks. So that same pool of people with the same analytics, data mining capability was applied in so many areas, right? So I did not understand why you need to sell, because the action was selling by itself, right? Yeah.
Mark?
So I think there are two things, right? There's the company culture that you have, which is in corporation, much bigger, and there's the culture of a client organization. I've had the incredible honor and pleasure, but also self-selecting mechanism to work for companies, whether it is IBM or SAP, that make an incredible standpoint about inclusion and diversity. The team in which we did Watson was really 50-50 male, female, spread around 22 locations around the world where people came from. So those things never bothered me. What I noticed when both in SAP and in IBM, I managed a lot of things like you manage a portfolio. So the little mini startups internally, and they rise to the occasion, or they fall down and the individuals get absorbed in other teams. The power I found for the female leads, and in one of the situations at IBM Watson, I had the most brilliant under 30 female lead in one of those teams, was that gift that women have more naturally developed in their life for actually listening to others and having social skills better developed, whilst having the same analytical and mathematical skills as their male compadres. If you look at the Big Bang Theory, it is not bad to have a Sheldon in your team, but you're going to need some Leonards or some Pennies to make sure the team functions. And that capability, I find, is really a tribute to a lot of female data scientist successes.
I can't agree more. It is absolutely that you need to have more Pennies in the Big Bang Theory to make that insight to be shared with the business. And that is, I think we've discussed in a couple of sessions talking about women in data science as well. I think that really helps. Okay, very quickly, next question. I think we're running short of time as well. Vyom Agarwal on Facebook says, I'm a software engineer with 3 years of experience in ML and in analytics. How could a person with similar experience get into starting an AI startup? Where should I start from? GL, do you want to have a go at that quickly?
I think if you have 3 years experience ML analytics, you would have the base, right? Then you have to find a startup to go apply to, right? Yeah, but there are all kind of startups. You have to find the startup which you believe in, because I think the startup journey is not an easy one, right? The startup journey is a really, really rough one, a really tough one. I was asked the same question about whether somebody should do a PhD. Okay, so I have a standard talk I give whether people have to go give a PhD. So I give that talk in universities. I say, why do you want to do a PhD? Make sure your reason for wanting to do a PhD is the right one. Yeah. So if If you do a PhD because your parents ask you to do a PhD, that's a wrong reason, right? You do a PhD because your supervisor say, will you do a PhD? That's the wrong one. You must go and do a PhD with the right motivation, right? So do I do a startup? Do I join an AI startup? I think very, very important. Look at the people in the startup and see whether you believe them or not. Because there are AI startups and there are AI startups, right? There are different kinds. You join the right one, you're on a journey, still no guarantee of success, but I think you'll learn a lot. But if you join the wrong AI startup, I think then, wow, it's going to be really rough, right? So yes, you can join, find the right one. Find the one in which you think that the people with the background is the right one for you, the human interpersonal relationship, whether they think they'll be competitive business model, you have to look at all that, right?
I couldn't agree more with Gio. One of the first questions that venture capitalists ask me when interviewing me, like, why did you take a position on this company's board, or why are you coaching them, or why are you giving them your time? One of the first questions that I ask, so do you like the founders? Do you like the cohesion between the human beings? And then, of course, they fear if these people can grow to the next level. Is their ego strong enough to lead a company, but also human enough to step aside temporarily and do an Eric Schmidt kind of approach that like Sergey Brin and Larry Page, to step aside to temporarily have a businessy CEO guide them to the next level while they are chief product officer and co-founder? Or will that break their spirit? And the human factor is, are these people that you want to spend 20 hours a day with in a room? And do you think you will still like them in 6 months? I think it's a pretty good question to ask yourself when you interview with them.
Okay. Next question is on Twitter, and Sarabjit Johal, he says, synthetic data is acceptable in most domains. Regulators are behind the curve in this area. I think he's right. What do you think, Mark? Hi, Sarabjit. First of all, hi to you. Thank you for joining us.
Gio. I'm going to give this one to Gio.
Gio?
Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, we have not used a lot of synthetic data, right? We actually only use customers' data. Yes, synthetic data is very, very important, because otherwise you will not. One of the biggest issue is that there are not enough data and there are not enough labeled data, right? So synthetic data, you must use it in a stepwise function, right? If you purely only depend on synthetic data, that's a huge danger that you may go down an alley or someplace where you don't want to go. So yes, use synthetic data, but make sure you're able to check and confirm with real data along the way, right? Yeah. So I think you should use it, but use it with care.
Okay. Next comment is from Sarabjit Johal as well. Hi, Sarabjit. And it says, I believe term AI should stand for augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, for the next 5 years. What do you think, Mark?
For the coming 20, and I agree.
Me too. I think we're still on a journey. It's not yet artificial intelligence as fully it should be. We are still on a journey, and it will be augmented for some time till we create all those processes, and that processes could stand alone by itself. That's true. Finally, one question, and we're off most likely. There's a question from Hussein Hassan on Facebook, and he says, I want to create platform where people in countries share all common stories and info. Please advise. GL?
Well, platforms like Medium and all that give you a chance to do that, right? I think the issue isn't whether you can create a platform. The issue is how do you attract people to come and participate in a platform, either as a contributor or people wanting to come. So it's not a challenge. It's not a technology challenge. I think it's how do you bring enough skilled talent and promote it, right? Yes, please do, I think, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Yep.
I underline Gio's answer. I want to additionally say, and what's the revenue model that keeps you going to make sure that you actually can burn while you're starting this all up and attracting people? Because a lot of good ideas start, but it's not if you build them, they come. You need to have some kind of model, income, revenue, or whatever, advertisement, investors, whatever, subsidies, non-profit, to keep going for a while before you grow. It's an exponential growth curve, and it's really going to be very flat before it goes up. So it's great. You want to do it? Geo says, do it. Just make sure that you are prepared, that you have long breath.
Absolutely. And I think with that, we can say that we've covered almost every question that was there. So thank you everyone for asking the questions. At the end of the show, 1 hour for 54 minutes, we've got 86 likes. So we're above 85%. Mark, are we good?
Well, people can still like in the replay, right? If you're listening to this in the replay and you make it to this moment, thank you so much. And do press like so Shelley can go on holiday.
Good stuff. So we need to make sure that we make it 100. But during the live show, this is the second best show. We've hit 86 likes. Though my last show was 108 in that particular show. So we're still we're in good space. Okay, good stuff. Thank you, GL. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And have fun.
Please come visit when you are in Singapore, right?
We will. You're stuck with me now. You're stuck with me.
Look forward to it.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Thank you for another episode. It was a huge show. You spent 2 hours again. I know it's early morning, 7 o'clock, hitting 9 o'clock now. But thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and love to have you on this show every time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Shelley, and thank you for doing such a phenomenal hard work behind all the screens to get everybody's answers and questions from all those channels addressed. And I think people, just the work Shelley does to make sure that everybody gets their say is worth an extra like. So thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, guys, so that was Marc Teerlink and Geok Leng TAN from AIDA Technologies and Marc Teerlink from SAP. It was a pleasure to have them on the show. Mark, like every time, every episode is phenomenal, great ideas and great knowledge and advice to all the audience. Hope you liked it. And if you did, please follow me for the next coming episodes on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're watching it on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and also smash the bell icon so that you are alerted next time when the show is on. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching this, and see you next week. Bye now.